evening, and thank you for tuning in online tonight to our Wednesday night broadcast at Victory. We're so thankful for each and every one of you that tunes in for all our services, whether it be on Sundays or Wednesdays. We're just very, very thankful for that. One of the things that we strive to do here is to develop a deeper walk with the Lord as well as deeper connections with one another. And we do that through groups, small group settings that meet here on campus. And we would love for you to be a part of these groups if you aren't already. We have multiple times that they meet, Sundays and on Wednesdays. Tonight, right after we hear from some special music from our worship team, we're going to move into one of those groups and let you hear and experience the teaching. We hope and trust it's a blessing to you tonight. Thank you so much again for being here this evening.
Well, sometimes I am rejected and I feel so all alone. Then I try to reach my Father and I know He'll be home. Oh, when life it's hard to handle and I'm fearful and alarmed, I get anxious to find Jesus and He stands with open arms. I got a hold of God this morning. I talk directly to the throne. Oh, I win their broken hearted, so afraid and so alone. Satan almost overtook me, trying hard to block my way. I just prayed a little harder, and I got a hold of God today.
I don't know about you, but I'm glad that I can get a hold of my Heavenly Father each and every day, and we pray to Him. I was seeking for the comfort of the precious Holy One. As I waited there in silence, I knew that He would come. But then I saw the light of heaven. He came right into my room. When I felt His presence touch me, I knew that I prayed through. I got a hold of God this morning. I talk directly to the throne. Oh, I win their broken hearted, so afraid and so alone. Satan almost overtook me, trying hard to block my way. So I just prayed a little harder. I got a hold of God today. I got a hold of God this morning. I talk directly to the throne. Oh, I win their broken hearted, so afraid and so alone. Satan almost overtook me, trying hard to block my way. So I just prayed a little harder. I got a hold of God today. I just prayed a little harder. I got a hold of God today.
So we're going to pick up. We did discuss this on Sunday evening, and some weren't here, and so we're going to spend a little more time discussing these types of conversation. We've already looked at those, but maybe we can see how these affect our everyday life. I mentioned about communication. We're talking about words, how we need to be faithful in our words. Let the words of my mouth, right? The Scripture says, and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. And that ought to be, that could be a daily prayer, a daily conversation that we have with the Lord, especially on those days where we know we're going into a situation that's going to be uncomfortable, or we're going to be tempted, or we're having issues with already with her or with him or with them. Let's prepare our hearts, right? Let's prepare our minds. The young man that one of my daughters is dating now is he's already got his EMT stuff, and he's passing some of his fire tests and things like that. And so he was trying to pass one of his tests, and where was I even going with this? Y'all are rubbing off on me. Yeah, but that's not it. Oh, that is terrible. Do I know?
I think it started.
It has. But it's early. I'm not 50 yet. I've got 2 weeks. I've got 2 weeks. Does anybody take Prevagen in here? Have y'all tried that yet? Maybe I need to start Prevagen.
We've talked about trying it.
Yeah, maybe I need to try that. Get ahead of the curve there. Maybe to cut it off at the pass. Have y'all tried Prevagen yet? Yeah. Oh, was it?
I've been told that
How important?
your money, it's a good thing to buy.
Do what?
I've been told that if you want to waste your money, it's a good thing to buy.
I gotcha. Maybe just buy a Sudoku book or something like that and keep exercising the mind. Maybe is the best thing. Man, yeah. There is no hope. All right, well, we'll just move on. I have no idea. With the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in my sight. It'll come to me maybe tomorrow. But we go into it with this idea, that we've got to hit it head on. We've got to be prepared for it. I think that's where I was going about being prepared. If we're going to take a test, we're going to study for it. That's kind of where I was going. Right? Told you it'd come. It was a little slow getting there. I'll tell my wife all the time. I said, she's a little bit slow. She's worth the wait. She don't like it, but anyway. But if we know we're going into a test, having taken a test or whatever, or maybe even if you're going to the doctor's office, and you're going here for the physical, you're like, I need to walk this week, maybe kind of get it going. I'm bad about that with a dentist, and I got a dentist appointment on Friday morning, and I'm gonna make sure. I floss regularly, but that morning I'm flossing on, that morning I'm flossing on the way up there, and I've always wondered why they floss you after they clean your teeth. You ever notice that? Yeah. They do all this stuff right, and then they go in the floss. I'm thinking, why do y'all do that? I asked her that. Do what? Yeah, but why don't they floss before they clean the teeth? Well, she said it's because once you clean, they don't want to force any of the plaque back into the cracks or whatever, and so that's why they floss it afterwards. I thought, well, maybe it's that sand, they make grape flavor in to get it out of there, because that is you're gonna need to floss after that, right? It's they sandblasting it. Anyway, so I go Friday morning. I'll be flossing on the way up there, a little, and I go in. I always hit the breath freshener stuff, I'm like, why don't I open my mouth? That's got to be the grossest job in the world, is messing with somebody's teeth. I'd rather mess with somebody's feet. I don't know if I would or not, but we want to be prepared, and if we're going into certain situations, we need to be prepared as well. All right. Experts tell us that 7% of our communication is verbal. Now, I don't know. I think that varies. That will vary within couples and different things like that. 35% comes from the tone of voice that we use, and the other 58-60% is through body language, eye contact, facial expressions, our body movement, and things along those lines. And I think there is a lot of communication that goes on like that. I think the older we get, my experience is sometimes the less that we talk, and you just kind of read their posture, read their whatever, you can read the look in their eyes, you can read their eyebrows, you see all this facial expression, and it says an awful lot, and that's why we don't talk about how text is so hard to really communicate truly with. For 1 Peter 3:10, it says, he that will love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil, and his lips that they speak no guile. I was studying this week in James chapter 3. I was studying the tongue. And the Bible likens it to poison of a deadly asp. It likens it into a fire. It says, how great a matter a little fire kindleth, so has the tongue. How it can just start stuff. And that's how it does. The tongue, we start things. We all know that person in our life that is always doing this, right? Always starting stuff. And if they're not starting it, they're putting a little they're putting a little fuel on the fire, right? They're adding to it. They're not helping, and they're not trying to put it out. They just add a little fuel to it. I remember when I was a kid, that was before we had garbage pickup. Y'all remember those days? 55-gallon drum out in the backyard, and you burned everything, you know. That was just the way we did it. It wasn't real safe, you know, especially when you had 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old boys out there, because we would find the hairspray bottles and the aerosol cans and, you know, paint cans, and we knew what was going to happen, you know, and it was like a game. Let's throw it in there, see how fast it blows up before we can get away. You know, we act like we're getting hit with a landmine or something to fall on the ground, you know. How silly was that? You know, I remember putting shotgun shells in the wire of a tree, trying to hit them with my BB gun. Trying to hit that little knock with a BB gun. I'm like, really? I'm blessed to be alive. You know what I'm saying? But I remember one in particular, what we would do in order to light the fire, which wasn't good. But when Dad didn't know this, but we would take gas cans. He will now, right? We'd take gas cans, you know, from our three-wheelers or motorcycles or whatever, and we would, you know, douse the fire. Mom said take trash out. And we'd put all in the thing. Well, we were smart enough to know if we just throw a match in there, we're going to feel the effects of it before we can get out of the way, right? But if we could do like Bugs Bunny did and have a trail, you know, of gunpowder going up to it, we could get far enough away. So that's what we would do with our gas. And so we would make this trail, you know, and light over here and let it come, let it go up, and then poof, right? Well, this one time we were doing that, and it went out before it got to the barrel. I'm like, stink! But the barrel somehow was already burning. So I'm like, I'll just pour a little bit in there, because you always want to go through an ant pile, by the way, if you're doing that, right? If you're a kid, you're going to burn an ant pile up. You still enjoy doing that, right? Because, yeah, you let that sink in there, you know, and it's not going to do a whole lot underground, but you're going to see the effects of it. If you had a Barbie doll, it's bonus, right? Lay it on top. Anyway, well, this one anthill did not catch on fire. Trash was, so I took that trash can, I remember, put that gas up there on it and tried to do that, and it came up through there, right in that thing. And my eyes, you know, life flashed before my eyes. And I remember taking it, and I shook it one time before I chunked it, you know, and then dove out of the way. And somehow, by the grace of God, that must have put that fire out or something. I don't know what did. It didn't blow up. And I'm over there going, you know, one of those deals. A little bitty fire can cause a whole lot of problems. A whole lot of trouble. And a lot of times we're trying to put gas on it instead of putting water on it or sand on it. Knowing when to speak and what to speak is critical. And so the types of conversation we need to avoid, one of them is the accusatory conversation. I mentioned that. That's accusing each other all the time. Did we talk about this last week, or that was just on Sunday? Okay. And Proverbs 18:13 gives us some insight on this. So I'm talking about accusatory conversation. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and it's shame unto him. He that answereth a matter before he heareth, it is folly and shame to him. And I did talk about that a little bit with my wife sometimes, how she'll be trying to tell me something and I won't listen to the whole thing before I start coming up with a solution to it. Did I share that with you in here? And how foolish that was of me. And we talked a little bit about how we can use you statements rather than I statements. I think I did discuss that in here. You know, instead of you always make, or you are always late type of deal. You know, we're late. I get frustrated with that. That accusatory conversation is really times where we get in a lot of trouble. Look, if something's wrong, something goes bad, if we're late, if somebody left the water on, if somebody left their air conditioning on, if somebody didn't take the trash out, if there's those types of issues, we got to realize, is it really worth fighting over, at the house? I mean, let's work on it. Let's get together. But aren't there more important issues for us to discuss rather than letting our whole day, whole evening get us sideways because, we let somebody left the trash out and the dogs got into it? Yeah, we got to clean it up now. It happens. And if you're perfect, then okay, you have grounds to stand on, right? If you're perfect, then go ahead and fuss at your spouse, all right? Man, none of us are perfect. None of us have got to that point. We're always doing something or forgetting something. It just seems to be very convenient for us to remind the other one how stupid it was that they did this or didn't do that. And now look at what's happened. Look at our bill now. Look at the electric bill now. We left that heater running all day long. Who cares? Right? Anyway, so many disagreements that go in a relationship. They're so easy to start blaming and accusing each other. He that answereth the matter for heareth it is folly and shame to him. We gotta quit listening to our flesh when it comes to that, because it's a very selfish attitude to have. So the second conversation was antagonistic conversation. Oh, that's where we got to. Yeah, I see my note here. Let's just pick up here there today. Here's where I get into trouble the most. It's not that my words are antagonistic in a mean way when I'm talking to my wife or whatever, but more in an aggravating or a teasing way. I love to aggravate. I love to tease. I mean, it's just part of my DNA. It doesn't make it right. But I don't want to, part of marriage. However, the only time that I know that my words, that I've seen anyway, have caused my wife to cry is when I pushed her over the edge when I was aggravating her one time. I remember I wasn't being mean, I wasn't ugly, I wasn't yelling at her, we weren't fussing. It was just, I was just aggravating about something. Now, probably if I looked at the whole aspect, there was other things going on. It wasn't probably aggravating at that moment that pushed her over the edge because I'd aggravated her about that before, whatever. It was probably the fact that she was pregnant, and having a time. It was probably the fact that maybe her brother or sister maybe had said something to her. Maybe it was something that the kids didn't do. Maybe, we had some bills. There's always, it's usually not the thing that pushes us over the edge. That's just usually one thing that has something's been building up. And in an emotional state, all of a sudden we lose her, right? Saturday morning, the boys Friday night, Hunter, he's the best man for Cole's wedding. They had a bachelor party type thing, a week early, and they were trying to work in their schedules. And all the guys, they went out and did some things and goofed off and came back. And anyway, they all spent the night. The next morning, this past Saturday morning, they were presenting Cole with their gift. All the bachelor, the groomsmen, they went in and bought him a Benelli Super Black Eagle 20 gauge, 28. I mean, it's like an $1,800, $2,000 gun. It's an expensive gun, but they all went in together and bought it for him as their gift. Man, they gave it to him Saturday morning, and my wife was videoing it. Well, Cole just started crying. He was like, "Man, this is too much, guys." He was just overwhelmed with joy, whatever. Well, my wife's filming. She is bawling. I'm filming her crying while she's filming Cole. And I still got it. She looked at me, she gave me the old stink eye, When she saw that I was filming her, and she looked at me and then turned away. But that, just the fact that Cole was crying and he was over emotion, that really wasn't what's causing her to cry. There's a whole lot going on right now in our lives. And she was just emotionally right here. And when she saw that, and it was almost like a scapegoat. It was almost like the door cracked open, and then boom, her emotions started coming out, in liquid form, right up there. And that's what happens. It's just something that we get to a point, and all of a sudden, one little thing, good or bad, all of a sudden just breaks it down, and here we go, And that can happen in our relationship. and calls us to do that. A man hath joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season, how good is it? See, when I was aggravating her that time, I just exceeded the threshold. And I didn't see it coming. Truth of the matter is, I was probably too close as it was, and just made it. So it's super important. And there are things right now that you could say to her that could set her off, right? You want to tell us what it is? No? Okay.
Hey, you see the look I'm getting?
Yeah. No volunteers? Anybody want to say, here's what it is? That's my, okay.
I would like to have supper tonight.
Mm-hmm. You like to wake up in the morning, right? Sure I did. I'm sure I was, but nobody was filming me, so that's okay, all right? There's no proof of that. I will be crying Saturday, I can promise you that. I can assure you of that. I talked about go clean your room. That's that part of that. I shared that illustration when I shared it with you before, and that was antagonistic to me. That was the way that we stop. My wife and I. It's kind of like when you're out in the ocean and you've got the undertow. Y'all been there? We're taking your kids. Maybe yourself. You've been out there. You go out there in the ocean. And after 15, 20 minutes, you're goofing off, playing around, walking around, or whatever. And all of a sudden, you kind of look back, kind of check everything on the shore, and you're like, where are they at? You realize, oh my word, they're way up there. You know how you just kind of shift sometimes, and you don't even realize it because of the undercurrent. You just kind of get up, walk around, and so what we will do when we do that, especially when the kids were younger, we'd pick out an umbrella or a marker or a buoy and say, now listen. Pay attention. Do not go past this. You get past it, you got to get back over here, right? You stay between this and that. And that's what we need to do spiritually. We need to pick out some buoys or some markers, an umbrella on the shore that's not going to move, and say, look, when I get close to that, I've got to make some adjustments. I've got to move back over to the middle. Otherwise, I'm going to get beyond about it, and I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get in unfamiliar water, unfamiliar territory, and sometimes it takes a long time to get back up there, right? What do you normally have to do when you find yourself in that situation at the beach?
Get out of the ocean and walk.
Yeah. To get back up there is just too hard sometimes to fight that current. The best thing to do is just get on out right there, walk up the beach, and then get back in if that's what you choose to do. And sometimes spiritually, that's what we need to do. We just got to get out of the water and get back to solid ground and then go back to where we were before we got off track. And we do that. If you have some boundaries in your relationships, it will help you do that. Over the years, it's been amazing how many people came to me and said, hey, here's our phrase for this, or here's our word for that, because we have shared these things. These are tools for my wife and I to avoid situations from escalating. And I think I told you about the go clean my room. Almost everybody here knows that about my mom and that sort of thing. And telling me to do something, I was already going to do it. But when she told me to do it, then I didn't want to do it. One of those deals. And that's what Michelle and I will do. If she's reminding me about doing something that she's already talked to me about or we've already discussed, I say, I'll handle that. If she's like, hey, don't forget, we got to do this. And then I can gently say, no, clean the room. That means I'm aware of it. I'm on it. I haven't forgot about that. And that helps her from continuing pushing the button and keep reminding me about it. It's letting her know, okay, he is aware of it. He's certain about it. Does anybody else have any issues like that? Do y'all ever have deals like that?
But has just started just saying attitude.
Attitude, yeah.
That's all he says.
Yeah.
Just
Towards you?
to me.
Yeah. How does it work for you?
She gets an attitude.
I realize that I've gone, getting ugly.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to stop and rethink what I'm doing.
Sometimes we have to make sure it's the right word, though, too. I told you about Granny, right? Mm-hmm. My wife, her mom, we called her Granny. That's her name. We called her Granny. It wasn't her name. Her name was Doris. We called her Granny. But she was always critical. Not always, but she as she got older, tended to get more and more critical. And complain a little bit more. And my wife mentioned one day, hey, when I get older, help me. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to whine. I don't want to complain. I don't want to be negative all the time. And so I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so my way of doing that, when she started doing something, I said, okay, Granny, come on now. And that didn't go so well. 2 weeks into it, we were doing something, we were moving stuff around. She said, I said, okay, Granny. And she says, first of all, don't ever call me Granny again. And I was like, hold time out. I said, we just had this conversation. You wanted me to help you. And all right. She says, I am. She said, but you're not calling me Granny for that. We got to come up with another name. We got to come up with another word, another phrase. So if attitude doesn't work for you, then you might say, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. Let's change that. Because that can come across too, you know.
Well,
attitude. He can have an attitude, say an attitude, and set you off.
right. Well, he has said, you're acting like Nina, which was my mother.
Right.
And she was extremely negative. But for me, to him, it says, you're murmuring.
Yeah, right.
Because I think you're like Moses in the desert and the people, and you're murmuring. That's how it got started. And so, and I'll hear him go. He'll be saying
Yeah.
something under his breath or whatever, and I said, you're murmuring.
Yeah. If that'll work, that'll help you from further escalating it, right? And that's part of communicating, right? If you don't say anything, if you don't try to help each other, then it can move to a point where all of a sudden it's full on, right? It's kind of like this Ukrainian-Russian thing. You saw them putting their soldiers on the border. We knew it was coming. Why didn't we de-escalate that, right? Now it's full-on war. We could have did something to keep it getting to this point, perhaps, whatever, but we can keep World War III and our relationships from happening too if we try to cut some of that stuff off. And we kind of do that with antagonistic conversation. The other one is apologetic conversation. We got a couple minutes here. So antagonistic, accusatory, and apologetic. A really big deal in relationships, that's whether it's marriage or parents or friends or kids, whatever, is that neither party understands or realizes the importance of learning how to apologize and saying, I'm sorry. And truly meaning it, not sarcastic, sorry. That doesn't do any good. It just sets it off a little bit more, right? But learning truly to say, you know, that was dumb. I'm sorry. And I think I should maybe share with you in service. I look at my wife as a very precious vessel, a gift from God that He has blessed me with. I truly, truly, men, believe that. And you probably do the same thing about your wife. When something is precious to me, now, I've got some guns, I've got certain, you know, material things that are precious. I take good care of them. You know, I look after them. I make sure they're not left out in the rain. I take care of them. And my wife is just, I mean, she's up there at the top. I want to take care of her. And I look at, why do I want to fuss? I don't want to fight with her. I don't. To my fault, probably. Because I'm like, I don't want to fight. It's not worth it to me. And sometimes that makes her mad because she's ready to go toe to toe. You know what I'm saying? She's ready. She's drawing the line. Say, let's come at me, bro. You know. And I'm like, no, it's not worth it. I'm not. You're too valuable. You're too precious to me. And but we can get to the point. Okay. Speaking of the little, come here. You're just in time. Come sit on the front row. I got like 60 seconds and I'm about done. Huh? Isn't she a thing of beauty? Now, she let me down Sunday night. She was scared. I dared her to come up to the platform. I was going to throw sugar down on her. She said she'd be willing to do it, and I called her bluff, and she didn't. So, hey, we're talking about apologetic conversation, talking about conversation, antagonistic, all that kind of stuff. And learning how to say, because here's the deal. If we want to get victory in relationships, we have to be willing to admit that we're not always right and that they're not always wrong. One way or the other, sometimes that's where we get. We have this idea, they're always wrong or we're always right. You can't have that both ways, right? It's just not going to happen that way, or you're going to have conflict. The Bible says, submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. That's biblical. That's submission. It's not about who wins. You know, sometimes we're so afraid to apologize to each other because we're afraid if I apologize, then I'm giving in. I'm giving up. She's going to win. He's going to win. If I don't shut my mouth, if I shut my mouth and don't keep talking about it, then they're going to think they win. And we just have an ego problem with that. So many times you think it's about over. You're like, oh, okay, we settled it down. One of us walks away. And while they're walking away, one's like, and by the way, ever been there? You ever done that? Oh, and another thing. And then boom, I mean, the bombs start going again. Gentlemen, you're not much of a man if you can't admit you're wrong when you're wrong. And you can't tell your wife you're sorry. That's being a man. It's owning up, manning up. And women, you know, it's hard. Guys, sometimes we go to the extreme and we come, like my wife when she was having babies. She had got some advice from one of the older ladies about getting an epidural. Remember that? And they were like, yeah, get an epidural. You don't need to be a hero, you know. Enjoy your well, do you got epidural on all the babies? Is that right? By the second, third, fourth child, my wife she's walking in backwards in the hospital, you know, when the baby was due. She was looking for the guy to give her the epidural, you know. That was her best friend. And sometimes I think we do that in a relationship. We walk into the door on our knees because we know we've messed up. Instead of owning up to it or whatever, we're like, I'm sorry. Well, you know, what can I do to make this, you know, whatever. And we don't. And we think if we do that, we don't have to have the conversation as to why there's an issue. You see, you know what I'm saying? We try to forego talking about here's why the problem is. We think if we say I'm sorry enough, then we'll bypass that. But what does that do? It just kind of sweeps it into the corner. Pretty soon, you've got to get out a pretty big broom or, you know, the shop vac to get all that junk out of the corner because everything gets thrown in there, and it's a whole lot bigger mess at that point, right? Isn't it easier to keep your floors clean if you do it every now and then, get all the little stuff up instead of waiting until, you know, you're having to kick stuff off the bottom of your feet as you walk through there? Yeah, same thing. And then affectionate conversation. We got to learn to be affectionate in that. I mentioned that Sunday that women are all about rapport talk, RAPPORT, morale building. You know, developing the relationship. My wife, when we have a conversation, she wants to work on that, building that relationship. Men not necessarily interested in rapport talk, but report talk. Give me the report. What are we having for supper? You know, did you pay the bill? Did you pay the electricity, electrical bill? Did you do this? Did you do that? We're looking. Give me the report. Give me the report. That's the kind of conversation that we typically have, where women are more on the relationship side, and then we've got to have a merging of those two. And I just don't have a whole lot of time. Come here, honey, and I'll close up. If you sometimes, come here, sweetheart, seriously. So I want to illustrate this for a second. Fair enough. Sometimes when we're having conversations, gentlemen, it's sometimes even more about words. Remember we talked about how communication is only about 7% verbal. The other is nonverbal. Sometimes my wife and I were talking the other day. We were having a conversation in the kitchen, remember, and we were trying to get ready for that stuff. All the parties, and we got all this stuff on our mind. And what do? We almost time we kind of turn to each other and we're like, what do we do? And we just did this. And then you held me, and I held you. And got to the point where a teepee, and we were literally had on each other. We were bearing each other's weight up. And we're like, I said, I'll hold you up if you hold me up. We were just having a touch. Sometimes I'll talk to my wife, and I'll take that hair back and I'll just push it behind her ears or whatever. That's saying more than I love you. It's saying he's into me right now. He's leaning into me, right? He's focused right here. It's not, I'm not walking away spouting off something. Just a touch sometimes is enough to say a whole lot more than words can say. That's why we have to have that affectionate conversation. If you walk into the house, guys and ladies, you're over there, you're on the phone talking to your friend or your sister or whatever. You got supper on the table. Maybe the grandkids are over there on the floor, washer and dryer's going. He walks in and you're just, don't even say anything to him. He's probably going, woo, she's glad to see me today, right? Woohoo! Without ever acknowledging, hey, be willing to acknowledge that. What butter's my bread? When when I come in and she makes it apparent that she's glad to see me. And that's worth coming home to. And that helps the conversation. Not that we got to go out and make out in the living room or anything like that. But it's just an affection, right? Hey, good to see you. I love you. Right? But we can do that. Father, I love you. Pray that you'd bless these folks, Lord, today. And Lord, in their conversations, Lord, many of them have been married so longer, Lord, than I've been alive. And I just pray, God, that you would, though, help us to take our level of relationship communication to another level in our lives, wherever that might be. Lord, enhance it. Make it better. Make it sweeter. May it be good examples. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. And that's the third. We hope that was an encouragement to you tonight. You may want to know more information. Maybe you have some questions. Maybe you'd like to pray with somebody and talk to somebody about some spiritual matters in your life. We have a pastoral care line, and we would love for you to be able to call. We have pastors standing by right now to be able to take those calls and assist you. We also have Wednesday night program for our teens as well as our young people. We have an Awana program here, and perhaps you or someone you know might like to be a part of that. You can find this and a whole lot more information on our website, VictoryBaptist.Church. God bless you and have a great evening.